Hello, Alabama. Dabo Swinney should have left Clemson 2 years ago to go to Alabama, avoiding the inevitable fall. But would that have been possible, or is it questionable? Let's see the news. The story of Dabo Swinney and his journey at Clemson is a narrative that mixes glory, nostalgia, and the hard lessons of competitive sports. When it comes to legacies in college football, few names shine as brightly as Swinney's in recent years. He not only transformed Clemson into a giant of college football, but also built a winning culture that seemed unbeatable for much of his tenure. However, as so often happens in the sports world, decline can be as inevitable as rise, especially when opportunities for change are ignored. 2 years ago, Swinney had the chance to go out on top. Nick Saban, the architect of the Alabama Empire, left the program at a time when the Crimson Tide needed renewal. It was the perfect opportunity for Swinney to return to his roots in the state where he grew up, leading one of the sport's greatest powerhouses. But he chose to stay, embracing the comfort of Clemson and the emotional connection to a place he helped transform. At the time, the decision seemed justified. Swinney was still loved, the recent national titles still resonated, and the culture he had implemented seemed solid. Today, however, that decision sounds more like a strategic mistake than a demonstration of loyalty. What we see now at Clemson is a team struggling to find its identity. The accumulated losses, including the humiliating defeat against Duke, expose weaknesses that were previously unimaginable. The defense, once an insurmountable wall, has systematically failed. The recruiting, which once guaranteed exceptional talent, seems to be losing its luster. And, perhaps most worryingly, the connection between coach and players seems to have worn thin. It's hard not to notice the athlete's indifference as Swinney tries to motivate them from the sidelines, an image that contrasts sharply with the glory days when Clemson was synonymous with excellence. Swinney has always been a passionate coach, someone who deeply believed in the power of culture and hard work. But modern college football demands more than passion. It requires constant adaptation, strategic vision, and above all, the ability to recognize when it's time to move on. James Franklin, Jimbo Fisher, Lincoln Riley, and Brian Kelly understood this at crucial moments in their careers. They left their posts at traditional universities because they knew the cycle was coming to an end. Swinney, on the other hand, remained trapped in the illusion that he could reverse the tide. Today, the situation at Clemson is alarming. 5 losses in a single season is something the program hasn't experienced since 2009, long before the Swinney era. The post-game statement after the loss to Duke, "This is rock bottom," sounds like an admission of defeat, even if masked by a tone of resilience. The half-joking comment about being fired, made in front of athletic director Graham Neff, reveals an uncomfortable reality. Swinney knows his time may be running out. He's facing the same curve that other coaches have faced before him, and now it remains to be seen if he can adjust his course in time. In Swinney's case, there's a human element that makes this story even more complex. He's not just a coach. He's someone who has invested his life in Clemson, shaping the program and his image and creating deep bonds with the community. His reluctance to leave isn't just pride or stubbornness, but a genuine belief that Clemson is more than a job. It's an extension of who he is. However, sports don't allow for sentimentality. With each defeat, the chasm between the glorious past and the uncertain present widens, jeopardizing not only Swinney's future, but also the legacy he has built. If there's a clear lesson in this story, it is that success in college football is ephemeral. Coaches like Nick Saban and Tom Osborne are exceptions, almost mythical figures who manage to transcend the natural cycles of the sport. For everyone else, decline is inevitable, and the difference between leaving at the top and being forced to leave lies in recognizing the signs. Swinney had that chance 2 years ago when Alabama was looking for a new leader. He chose to stay, confident that he could maintain the level of excellence that defined his era. Now, facing a chaotic season and a program that seems to be losing its way, the question remains, will he spot the next curveball in time, or will it be too late to prevent complete collapse? Okay, but in Alabama without DeBoer, could you imagine that today? Kalen DeBoer's trajectory at the helm of Alabama not only represents an impressive turnaround, but also serves as a stark reminder of how crucial it is to make strategic decisions during times of transition. To imagine Alabama without DeBoer today, especially considering the team's current performance, would be to acknowledge the risk of a monumental disaster for a program that has been accustomed for decades to living at the heights of college football. When Nick Saban decided to end his legendary era in Tuscaloosa, Alabama faced one of the greatest challenges in its history, finding someone capable of keeping the legacy intact while reinventing the program for the new era of college sports. The choice of Kalen DeBoer at the time was met with skepticism by many. Critics questioned whether he, coming from Washington, was ready to handle the enormous expectations and relentless pressure that come with the Crimson Tide's coaching job. Today, however, it's clear that this decision was a masterstroke. DeBoer not only brought stability to the program, but also demonstrated a remarkable capacity for adaptation and leadership. After a difficult start to the season, marked by a defeat in the freshman game against Florida State, Alabama reacted spectacularly. With 7 consecutive wins, including victories over ranked SEC opponents, DeBoer proved that he not only understands a game, but also knows how to mold a resilient and competitive team. This type of recovery doesn't happen by chance. It's the result of tactical vision, human management, and a deep understanding of the winning DNA that defines Alabama. Let's imagine, then, the alternative scenario, Alabama without DeBoer. Suppose that, instead of betting on an experienced coach like him, the program had opted for a more conservative choice or one less prepared for the modern challenges of college football. The result could have been catastrophic. Without a leader capable of navigating the complexities of the transfer market, the dynamics of recruitment, and the tactical changes demanded by the current game, Alabama could have sunk even further into the post-Saban abyss. A drop in prestige would have been inevitable, and the fans' confidence, already shaken after Saban's departure, could have completely crumbled. Furthermore, it's worth highlighting the emotional and cultural impact DeBoer brought to the program. He not only kept the team competitive, but also reinforced Alabama's identity as an unbeatable giant. The way he took responsibility for the initial losses without blaming the players, and the way he aligned the coaching staff and the roster around a common goal shows that he understands the value of unity in such a traditional program. This leadership ability is something not all coaches possess, and its absence could have left Alabama adrift at a critical moment. Today, with Alabama once again among the top contenders for the national title, DeBoer is seen not only as a competent coach, but as a visionary capable of building bridges between the program's glorious past and promising future. His presence is a buffer against the chaos that could have taken over Tuscaloosa. For a team still living in the shadow of Saban, DeBoer brought the right dose of innovation and continuity, ensuring that Alabama remains relevant on the national stage. Therefore, thinking of Alabama without DeBoer is to imagine a scenario of instability, decline, and possibly temporary irrelevance in college football. In a sport where the margin between success and failure is minimal, the right choice at the right time can make all the difference. And in this case, the decision to bring Kalen DeBoer to lead the program was, without a doubt, the choice that saved Alabama from a much darker fate. Envy your feedback. Penes later race. Historico. Salvas. Ryan Grubb wasn't exaggerating when he said that the final quarter in Columbia was one of Alabama's biggest growth moments in 2025. The offensive coordinator knows the weight of the words growth well because he's not just referring to tactical adjustments or play execution. He's talking about something deeper, something that has to do with the mentality and character of a team that, under Kalen DeBoer, is beginning to find its definitive identity. For much of the game against South Carolina, the Crimson Tide's offense seemed stalled. The connections weren't coming, the rhythm wasn't clicking, and opportunities were slipping away. It was the kind of scenario where, in the past, Alabama might have been lost in frustration. But this time, something different happened. With just over 2 minutes left on the clock, Alabama found its footing again. 2 touchdowns in just over 2 minutes and a 2-point conversion later. The score was 29-22, a comeback that says a lot about what this team is becoming. Grubb acknowledged this directly. That final period represented the maturity he and DeBoer have been trying to cultivate since day one in Tuscaloosa. The comparison to the game against Florida State is inevitable. There, Alabama had the chance to close out a difficult game and couldn't. Against the Gamecocks, the story was different. The team didn't just react, it imposed itself. Jeremy Bernard was the symbol of this comeback. The wide receiver scored the 2 decisive touchdowns, one receiving and one rushing, showing the versatility and composure needed when everything seems to be slipping away. But beyond the statistics, it was the energy he transmitted that made the difference. Bernard led an offense that refused to accept defeat. Ryan Grubb, who lives the game intensely, highlighted the group's emotional behavior. They didn't let the previous failures influence the next series, he said. This phrase summarizes the spirit that DeBoer has been trying to instill, an Alabama that doesn't live off past glories, but grows amidst the difficulties of the present. The coordinator also reserved praise for 2 names that have become pillars of this offensive reconstruction: quarterback Ty Simpson and center Parker Brailsford. Both, according to Grubb, showed leadership and confidence in the moments when the team needed it most. And it is precisely this type of attitude that transforms good teams into title contenders. With 7 wins and only 1 loss, Alabama occupies 4th place in the ranking and remains undefeated in the SEC, 5-0. The next challenge will be against LSU, which is going through a transition period after the departure of Brian Kelly and now has Frank Wilson as interim coach. The game, scheduled for Saturday night in Tuscaloosa, promises to be a new test to measure the maturity of this group. Kalen DeBoer arrived in Alabama with the mission of keeping a dynasty alive and, at the same time, giving it a new tone. What we saw in Columbia was a team that has learned to win even when the game goes off script. Share your opinion.